Alright, well, I might as well make this video while the series is still fresh in my mind. And well, seeing as I just recently discovered something that will change the course that I originally plotted for this retrospective. As it turns out, okay, well, I said that there, this is the portion of the series in which I usually say things that are that contain spoilers, but that's not going to be until later in the video, because I want to make a very a semi-important announcement first. As it turns out, I cannot find an English subtitle, the English subtitled Daitarn 3 in its entirety. It's 40 episodes long, and I can only find 13 of them at most. So, yeah, I'm not going to be able to review that in its entirety. So, it seems like I'm going to have to skip to the title that's probably going to get me more hits, if anything, anyways. The original Mobile Suit Gundam. About that though, I'm not going to be able to review the subtitle version of that either, because I can't rent any DVD releases that have the subtitles at this time, and the dubs are illegally streaming on YouTube, Crunchyroll, and a few other sites, and pretty much any site that mirrors those legal streams, because I don't know if it's Sunrise or if it's Bandai, or it's one of those two, but they are very good at keeping the subs suppressed, and I think that these are the older. I'm not sure. These might be the older dubs, but there's only 42 episodes, and I did my research on the original Mobile Suit Gundam, and I found out that apparently episode 15 of the original 43 episode run is what's missing. Yeah, as it turns out, the original release of the dub mysteriously omitted one episode from the series run, which again is episode 15 of the Japanese version. It's just completely gone. I don't know why. Maybe it just wasn't available at the time. Maybe it isn't really all that important in this series. I don't know. I guess I'll find out when I watch it. But at any rate, and now I'm done saying that, and I'll probably have to say it again at the beginning of my next video anyways. Here's the spoiler. Here's the spoiler warning, because what I'm going to go into next is going to almost necessarily spoil parts of the show Invincible Superman Zambot 3, which is what the full title of the show is. At any rate, alright, I think I'll start with the important tropes. The important tropes and innovations. Okay, so I guess I should kind of address the whole aspect, the whole depression tropes thing I brought up in the previous video. Okay. As I said before, through the late 70s into the early 90s, Tomino was afflicted with some severe depression. Many people correlate this to some tendencies within his work, some kill-em-all tendencies, if you will, but, nothing can really be substantiated on you know, unless it is. So, at any rate, this show, in fact, is actually the beginning of his Komal tendencies. And it really doesn't start surfacing until later in the series, despite what I told you before. Yeah, I said before that a lot of characters die, but most of them are just like, extras up until episode 16. Then one by one, members of the secondary characters, and then eventually the main characters start getting killed until like only 7 of the original, I think only like 7 or 8 members of the cast are remaining. Like those that were and given that the series it consists of a group of families that account for like quite a few characters. It's pretty much everybody that was involved in the final battle, which are the grandfather, grandmother, all the fathers of all three of the pilots, Chonishiki the dog, and well, all 3 of the pilots. All of them except Keppei die at the end of the series, which is, of course, rather audacious for its time. Hell, Zeta Gundam had a somewhat similar ending, and I would still consider that very audacious for its day, to even this day. However, the only reason I would say that Zambot 3, is somewhat less of a downer ending and somewhat more of a bittersweet one is because in the end, Keppei does succeed in defeating the Gaizak Empire, and the Earth is, for all intents and purposes, saved. That being said, pretty much everybody that did survive will have some psychological trauma to work through, and for a while, seeing as at least one family member of everybody in the main cast died. But it kind of comes with the territory, and I guess that brings us to our themes of the work, which might kind of overlap with tropes at least to begin with. I think one of the themes that from this work that might carry over to some of his later works, though it certainly is more pronounced in the Gundam franchise, is the notion of conflict being something that almost unavoidably damages all the people involved in it. Now, in the Gundam franchise, he's able to develop this idea far more than he's able to in Zambot 3, though he certainly doesn't run away from any attempt to do so within Zambot 3. And for the most part, I think he does so rather successfully and in a dramatically effective manner. That being said, it's not exactly... It is a war for all intents and purposes. I would say that. But the fact that it's a smaller scale conflict might... And the fact that it's not, as I said before, it's not really like the Gundam franchise where it's usually gray versus gray morality, with the protagonists usually being aligned with just a lighter shade of gray. Instead, it's, people might consider it just pitch black to very light shade of gray, or as I called it, blue versus orange, seeing as the Gaizak's value system and the humans' value systems are just so different that it's kind of difficult to grade them the Gaizak on our scale. Part of the reason for this is because, Yeah, as it turns out, the guys, as it turns out, the real objective of the guy stock computers, because as it turns out, Killer the Butcher was actually working for a computer that claimed to be his god. It turns out their real objective was to eliminate evil people from the world. But since the computer found out that all people have the potential to be evil, he just decided to destroy all sentient life. I mean, pretty much substantiates what I said before about it not really defying the whole blue and orange morality thing. But at least it can be called a different worldview, even if it is something that's one that is almost completely alien for most human logic. Though I bet there are some humans that could agree with him. But I'd like to think that most humans would find that a little extreme. All right. At any rate, any other themes? Well, I mentioned in the review there was the whole coming of age thing with Capet. For all intents and purposes, a very brash, energetic, almost obnoxious at times youth. Very deviant from the conventional protagonist of a mecha show. Certainly one of this time period, but I mean certainly certainly one of this era, if you will. And Tomino would become defined by that in many of his later works as well. Suffice it to say, he's not quite like Amuro or Camille Bidan or any of those characters, but he is definitely deviating from the norm in his own right. If you're wondering why this 12-year-old kid and this 14 or 15-year-old, all these pilots are actually able to go into combat with relatively little trauma, it turns out that in episode 20, the grandfather reveals that in addition to sleep teaching them how to use the mechs, he was also hypnotizing them to not feel fear in combat. Yes. Which is why I say that their side is really a rather light shade of gray. Just because, it is rather ethically dubious when you think about it, but if you felt it was justified, I guess there's not really much that they could do about it besides, the less trauma the better? Question mark? I mean, they don't really explore that. It's kind of more of an expository thing, so I can't really say that it reinforces any themes, but yeah, I don't know. Like, the innocence, I don't know, subversion of the innocence of youth, I guess, could be part of it. Like, again, probably one could say that comes with the coming of age territory, but I think that it can be defined in a category of its own. Motohiro Kito's works, for instance, they kind of subvert the whole notion of the innocence of youth. Kind of like substantiates the adage that I may or may not have made up that those who are the most innocent are the most easily corruptible. Yeah, that kind of stuff happens in Kito's works, but to perhaps a greater extent than it does in this. Yes, there are times in which Capet does show weakness, he does waver, and to be fair, the other two pilots do as well, but to not quite the same degree. just because again, Capet is a little younger, and apparently they were all under hypnosis through the whole time. Yep, that's not questionable. So, I don't know. I guess that'd be worthy of consideration as well. But aside from that, yeah, the show itself is not really quite as complex or realistic as Gundam is. So, I guess that's kind of all there is to it for now. Hopefully this was a little shorter than my last video. That went severely longer than I originally intended, and I apologize. Like, I I apologize just in the most sincere manner that I can possibly muster for that ever being the case. And that being said, I'll probably be back with a review of Mobile Suit Gundam. Yeah.